Hey there, friends. It's Bill McDonald, the Reading and Writing Doctor here. What I'm doing is setting my timer. Welcome to Meaningful Modeling Methods and Materials in 10 Minutes or Less by Bill McDonald and the Right Prescription. I try to remember that you guys have a life. So I have made a promise that once I start the lesson, I'll set my timer for 10 minutes, try to wind it down. And what we'll work on this week is uh, a piece by piece putting together in the process of an essay. And I'll use my materials, but feel free to use any of your own. You can use any graphic organizers, anything that you feel might help you in that process. So, as always, if you ever have a question or need help, email me at the email address in the upper right hand corner of the screen, or you can message me if you're watching this through my Facebook group called the ELAR and Right Prescription. Um, let's get started so that I can not take up too much of your time on this busy week. So hopefully my timer will go off in the 10 minutes. I've had it not go off before. So let me get straight to the screen. So for those of you who have uh, the handout, it's going to be on page 10, question number 7. Okay. And the first thing that your students are going to look for is what purpose it is. And then they're going to look for the prompt. Now, for this one, I went ahead and asked it in the form of a question, but your students will often see uh, the prompts for extended essay in the form of statements. So write an essay, write a well-organized essay that states the main message from the story. Support your evidence with evidence from the story. And then that part's going to be there. Write a well-organized essay. As soon as they see those 5 words, they need to automatically realize that this is the 5 point essay from 2 different readers. And what they'll see is what's a simplified student rubric on how to get a 5 from the 2 different readers. Okay, so let's take a look at that. In my writing folder, this current corner is it expository extended essay or is it argumentative? It's going to be expository. So the first thing you ask is what is the prompt? What is the topic? And so if you use my graphic organizers, we'll go one step before that and use Wonder Woman's acronym, Wonder Woman. What is the purpose? It's going to be informative expository. And as soon as your students see the word essay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're going to be looking for the 5 bullets to remind themselves of the 5 main steps to follow. What is the prompt slash topic? And typically, open-ended uh, questions or statements are going to have that word prompt there. Sometimes it'll have uh, the question in the form of a question mark, and sometimes it'll still have a topic, but it'll just tell you the topic in the form of a statement. And so we're going to read in a moment that it's the author's theme, the main message. Okay, so you have to know that. So right away, you see that what is the author's, what is the purpose, or what is the topic. And so with that in mind, we will then work our way um, down. The first bullet says, clearly state your central controlling idea or thesis. Respond to the prompt in a complete sentence. Now, the reason that this first bullet is separate from organization is because they're saying you don't have to have your central controlling idea or thesis in the introduction. I just recommend that for elementary students and most middle school students that you teach them to get that as soon as possible. And I would recommend it somewhere in the essay. So clearly state your central idea, how to get to one land, a central idea statement or a thesis statement. And so they've got to ask themselves, is the idea a one part question, a two-part question, and are they going to just try? This is going to be their I for introduction. I for introduction. I do I need one idea or two ideas? They've got to decide, am I just going to be making my introduction present so I can get a two? Or am I going to work on being effective so that I can get a three? Because not only do they have to have um, their central idea to get to one land, how to get to two land, organize your essay effectively. And the organization in the adult rubric basically says we're looking for an introduction, a body, and conclusion, transitions, and flow of ideas. And so the idea here is that in order to go from a one to a two, there has to be an introduction, a body, and if all your students have is evidence and examples of evidence, several, but they don't explain them, then because of how the rubric works, they can still get a two as long as they have their idea and they have evidence, a certain amount of examples and sentences. And the rubric also states there has to be a closing, and then they have to somehow connect the idea. Okay. The development part is how it gets to a three. So when you look 3A, use examples of evidence that best support your response. And so that's why I have that little heart that I showed you guys, because the theme that we're going to be reading about goes from a topic where the student is worried and confused and scared, and it transitions to him being excited. So a theme that we're going to learn is uh, my life is a mess at some point, but how do I age? How do I mature? How do I grow from it? And a lot of times, if your students will look at the title, it'll help them understand the topic, and they start reading towards the end, or at least the middle, they'll be able to decide some sort of extension. How is his life different or better or worse from the experience? And then the H that I made in the other video was a capital H. So your students can say, one, I need a word so I can make my central idea. I need a phrase, and then I want to turn it into a central idea statement, a controlling idea statement, or a thesis statement, so that I can have a good chance to for sure get a one, and then they'll go straight from their um, their topic to the evidence, because if you go straight from the topic to try and make a central idea statement, you don't even know what the evidence is. And so that's why it's very important to teach your kids TEA, that go straight from whatever the topic is to look at the evidence that's provided. And because almost always these informative, expository, and opinion argumentative prompts are based on concepts or skills that require your students to read the entire passage that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, an introduction, about a conclusion. They have to write an essay based on that as well. So, um, basically, the theme that we're going to be building to is like, in spite of the negative, and whatever examples that they're going to use of the fear that the character has, and explaining how those impact him with different sentences because I need to look at the next part says A3B, develop your ideas in detail, explain your evidence, and explore with vocabulary and voice. So if you notice when you go look at the rubric for both informative expository and opinion argumentative, you're going to see one of the bullets that says you use vivid word choices. So you want to get a good chance to go from a 1 to a 2 to a 3. Don't just EXP 1, 2, 3 explain, but EXP explode with your vivid vocabulary, your word choices. Maybe you might want to work on connecting your ideas and a more effective way with transitions. Okay. And then is your ending going to be just a restating to be present? I can at least get a 2. Is there an ending? 2 sentences. You can possibly rephrase in some way. Or could it be a conclusion, like something you might call a reflection, where you kind of take the reader beyond just the basic restating of the central idea? You don't want to have kids restate their thesis, but you don't want to have them state the topic, but you do want them to, if they're a struggling kid, they can restate their central idea or their controlling idea or their thesis. So there's my timer. So the last thing I want to show you is that there is one more bullet, and your kids have to be aware of that. It's the last bullet. In order to get a 4 or a 5, you can't just end the essay. You've got to work on the capitalization, usage, punctuation, grammar, and sentences. Okay. So basically the cups, capitalization, usage, punctuation, um, um, make sure that uh, you have control over the PS part. Psst, double check that there's no run-ons or fragments, the sentences. So spelling, and then psst, don't forget, check for run-ons and fragments, and then you can add, remove, replace, or move things. All right. And so you'll see there at the bottom, the the C will be the C from the um, I love you. I saved that for you guys here so you can see. Basically, I got the Dollar Tree I love you and changed it into I heart C. Introduction. The body of your is the key, the heart of the essay is the evidence, because you need the evidence to make your central idea, your controlling idea in your thesis. You need to explain the evidence with a specific number of sentences. What does that evidence, if you're going to use 2 examples, you want to put them in complete thoughts. And then you say, okay, well, he before was this way, and after he was this way. So he turned from the 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 title of the story will kind of give you an idea. And that's why I said in an earlier video, when you read a title, it will help you understand the topic, and sometimes it will help you build a theme. It's called capital splash, capital mountain, ellipsis, capital terror, as in terrible, negative, turns, transition, capital, capital terrific. So for this kid that will study and get some evidence from in our next video, he's going to start off in the first portion of the story having a terrible time and not enjoying it. And so we would have to go ahead and use that part, the beginning and possibly some of the middle, to explain how the experience is affecting him in a negative way. And then we would transition to how it affects him in a positive way and how it would make his life better. And then, of course, we would either restate or we would rephrase or would reflect about the importance of overcoming what we would try to figure out is what is the central idea that possibly we would come up with something like, based on the evidence that in spite of having to go through things that are scary or frightening, sometimes um, you need to keep going, not give up with the help of your friends. That could be just one of many central idea statements that that's what the little boy Jonathan learns, that he's able to go from something that's filling him with terror into something that turns terrific. And he wouldn't have been able to do that if he would have given up or just walked away and given into his fears. So that's basically how you might lay out a way, how you might lay out. And I didn't get any of that from my head. I went straight to the 5 point bullet, and I was able to use a combination. I'll show it to you real quick. I want to wrap the video up because I hate going too long on you guys. I want to make sure that you see that for those of you that need more of a guide, um, what original words can we use so that when we make our central idea statement, we can use those words, because some of us have to restate what other words, well, can we use? What original way can we start or um, write our central idea? Is there a wow beginning? Because if you saw, the train had a train whistle. So what's your whistle? What's your wow? What's your bridge? What's your lead? Your hook? So if you think of this person as this as his head, what's your hat? What's your hair that comes before the essay? But for this sake, we'll focus mainly on, I just need to get the central idea statement out, the controlling idea or the thesis statement, uh, but based on evidence. So we're going to look for the terrible parts, and we'll look for the positive parts, and then figure out what can we come up with that allows us to say the theme that could be learned from this is how life can be better if you just don't give up. And so, as you see here, it goes from red to yellow to green. Okay. You would ask yourself, why do I feel this way? And the heart is because the evidence and the way your kids explain it will be the heart of the essay. And your students can tell you in the organization part, they can let you know where they're getting their evidence from. Then you can either write the evidence with or without quotation marks, because it doesn't matter. You can see the essays samples. Some of them have it, some of them don't. Then you take time to explain your evidence. And all the while remembering that, are you trying to remember to wow the reader with that vivid vocabulary that you can use all throughout? And then for whatever example of evidence you use, the GPS is, what's the who, Jonathan? What is he doing? When is he doing it? At what point in the passage? Where is he at when it's happening? Why do you think that's happened? That specific evidence happening? Which specific detail can I use to pull his deep emotions out? And how can I make sure that I'm explaining Jonathan's negative predicament and how it transitioned? And then, of course, the end, the shoelaces are going to tie it all together. And as I mentioned, your kids will either restate, as in repeat, their idea called central controlling idea or thesis. They can rephrase it, or they can end in some special way. And again, this is just uh, a lot of information, but your students would need to grow from a one to two land to three land. And then if they can remember that once they finish their essay, the conventions is the editing, they've got to take a look at this part of the folder that I gave most of you and check for capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, or sentence boundary errors. And think of the psst, don't forget, because a lot of kids don't bother to check for this problem right here, run-ons and fragments. I know that's kind of corny, but they need to remember to do that. So that's a combination of using the I love you to think of the The essay in terms of I as in introduction and idea, heart as in the combination of your evidence and the way you explain it. And if you choose to do so, explode it with vivid vocabulary in your word choices. And then to transition to an ending, uh, to kind of restate the importance of, in our case, for our story, not giving up, no matter what happens, no matter how scared you get, that you just allow your friends to kind of keep pulling you along and let you get through an experience when it's tough. And that's an example of mess age. My life's a mess right now, but I'm going to age, I'm going to mature, I'm going to grow, I'm going to learn through the help of my friends how to get through a tough situation. And so whether it's using the word theme or message, that's something that we're going to try to build to over this week as we discuss how to kind of piece together the pieces of an extended essay response about theme. Take care and God bless.